What if the future of Oklahoma soccer isn't just the next big player, but the next wave of coaches, inclusive programs, and goalkeeping development? This week on the Mas Futbol Podcast, we sit down with Adam. How do you say your name?
Kennis.
Adam Kennis. The guy quietly shaping the foundation of the game across the state. From coaching education for goalkeepers, training, to ODP and adaptive soccer program. Adam, welcome to the Mas Futbol Podcast, man. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's been a long time. Long time in waiting. I wanted to come here.
I am, and that's, partially my fault. We were trying to schedule it around a very hectic time in my life, when I was becoming a new man. That's what I like to say whenever someone has a kid. You're becoming a new man.
That's right. I don't know why you think having an infant, toddler is hectic.
Why do you say that?
I'm just messing
It's
with
definitely
you.
hectic.
Yeah, it changes your life for the better. Right?
Definitely. It definitely does.
It reshapes your priorities. I wouldn't give it up for the world.
No, not at all. That is what life's about, the thick of it, right?
Yeah.
So, again, I appreciate you for coming onto the podcast. As many of our listeners know, we always like to start off with where the passion of the game came from. So if you want to dive into where the game started for you, I would love to hear it.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a little town outside of the main capital of Pennsylvania. So there's Harrisburg, and then there's Philly and Pittsburgh. A little bit south of there is called York, not New York, but York. There was no football, no soccer. So I never heard of the game. And when I was 10 years old, my sister was going to ORU in Tulsa. And my family ended up moving 30 miles north to the capital. She came home over Thanksgiving break, and she showed me a ball. And I said, what do I do with this? And she taught me the story of Pele. And she said, hey, everyone in Oklahoma is playing this. And it's a sport I never heard of, right? So
How old were you?
I was 10. Yeah, 10 right there. So I didn't grow up playing micro soccer or anything like that. My family is more into like track and field. But I didn't understand why you would run that much unless you were being chased, right? So I was like...
They're preparing for the chase, probably.
Yeah. I was like, there's no sense. But literally, she gave me that story, of Pele and gave me my first soccer ball. It was super retro, right? And I played in my bare feet because I thought that's what you had to do. No one in my family, no one in my town, nothing like that had ever played. So, made some goals like imaginary on my fence, right? And the other two were like some trees, and it was diagonal, so that's proper, right?
Yeah, you had your field, you had it. It was all up here.
Yeah, and I just played with myself, and I remember, the neighborhood kids like, "What are you doing?" They
didn't play soccer?
No, it was like non-existent, which is wild because if you look at Pennsylvania now, they have 2 state associations. They're wild, everywhere. They love the game. More people play the game there than a lot of states.
Really?
Obviously, they have MLS, and Philadelphia Union's doing a really good job with their academy. So,
the state's producing great players.
Yeah.
I think, isn't Pulisic from...
Yeah, he's from Hershey. It's actually where I was married.
Wow.
Yeah, so I always say to my wife, I gave you the sweetest wedding.
There you go. And you're not lying there. That's a good one.
But yeah, that's how it started. And then eventually, our school ended up having some football, some soccer starting. It started out with wrestling coaches and science teachers, just stepping out there. And then soon enough, there was a club starting local. So I went out. I remember trying out for the first team, and, I was fast. So, I was in because there was no soccer. I didn't have to be good.
Yeah.
We were the beginners. So it's amazing to see, how far it's grown, and to know there was no access. I mean, York College, has soccer now. So where I was born, it's quite wild. And obviously with Pulisic, it's been on the map now for a while. But yeah, then my parents split up for a number of years, and I moved with my mom across the river. And the junior high school that I went to ended up having a soccer team. And I remember, honestly, I think it was seventh. It was either seventh or eighth grade. I remember it was fall. I remember like the leaves were crunching underneath my boots. I could hear the snap of the corner flag in the wind. And I can even tell you where I was looking. I was facing east. Like that's how
vivid the memory is.
Yeah, it's wild. And honestly, like I lost that memory until about 3-4 years ago. It was brought back to me like, hey, this is where it all began. But I remember that fall day and looking up and just knowing that I wanted to be involved with the game forever.
That was it. That
was it, man. Just, yeah, it was, I was being coached. Again, it was like a biology teacher and a track coach that was, coaching us. It was very new. But yeah, they believed in, fitness, right? Like fitness, laps, what we call suicides, right?
Yeah.
But I just loved every bit of it and the environment. What was odd though is like I never had ambitions to like play pro or, like a lot of kids play for their national team. I just knew I wanted to be involved with the game somehow. And so, yeah.
So then after, I guess you did junior high ball?
Yeah.
Did you do high school ball?
Yeah.
And then after high school, I guess you must have hit a block or what?
Yeah,
what
yeah.
did you do at that point?
Yeah. So I had some medical issues come up, and I suffered with that for number of years, and then the MASL was big back there. It was a different league back then, but there was Harrisburg Heat, so I went and played with the pro team.
That's indoor.
Yeah, indoor.
For the listeners that might not know, MASL is a professional indoor league.
Yeah. So we would play like Baltimore Blast and people like that, But honestly, like I found out, getting there was my biggest accomplishment as far as a player, because I did not add any value.
Yeah.
As a player, I tell people, I was much gifted at track and, like my family, but you can't pick what your love is and your passion, know?
No, I feel that. And then I guess you must have started asking yourself the question of, how do I stay involved in the game if being a player isn't going to be the way? Yeah. Did you automatically know that would look like being a coach or influencing the game that way?
No, I didn't. I honestly never even thought of coaching. I just thought, hey, I'm going to be a player, so I would play outdoor adult leagues, indoor leagues, things like that. And then a job opportunity opened up here in Oklahoma from Pennsylvania. And I came down. I thought it was a very good business opportunity for me. And then I brought my wife on the second visit, and we found a lot of peace in Oklahoma. We were accepted. Everyone looked at us in the eyes, asked us how we were doing. We weren't used to that in the ghetto.
Oh, yeah. We had the hospitality won you over, right?
Yeah. I thought everyone was trying to sell me something at first.
The defense was high, huh?
Yes, it was at first, I wasn't used to it, but we loved it, and we had recently had a child, and I was like, I want to raise my family somewhere else. And I don't know how.
Home.
Yeah. And what's wild is my wife, actually, her mom grew up in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
Okay, so she is Oklahoman as well.
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then, so you ended up in Oklahoma City, though?
No, Tulsa. Tulsa
okay.
area, yeah.
And then, I guess, where did the coaching come? Or was it coaching that you got into first?
So what ended up happening was I was trying to find, the local place to play, right? So there was a soccer city, not where it's at now, but it was behind All-Star. And I would play there, pickup games where, wear a light and a dark and bring $5, and you were playing, right?
Open play.
So Dr. Robert Zollner, is a business owner in Tulsa. He has the Eye Institute, sleeps out, all this stuff. But he was a soccer player, and he was like, hey, why don't you, come play with our team? And at the time, his brother was the dean of Tulsa Community College. So there was like a community of soccer players that I leaned into. They went to NSU. So they were a little bit older than I. So Eric and Robert asked me, hey, our daughters are playing in Bixby. They're U6. Why don't you come out? And, yeah, sure. No problem. And I got hooked.
That was it.
That was it.
Was it watching them play? How old was your kid at the time?
Mine was still in diapers.
Still in diapers?
Yeah.
Okay, so they weren't playing.
No.
Did they eventually get to start playing, though?
I had 3 kids, 2 girls and 1 boy. My son played. The other 2 were into other things. But they were asked more times than you can imagine.
Yeah.
So you play football too? You play soccer? And I said, hey, next time, just tell them, if I was a plumber, would you want them playing with toilets?
Right. That's a good one, too. I like that one.
Yeah, I encourage my kids to be, individuals, but my son loved it because his friends played, everyone gets drawn to the game.
For different reasons. I can feel that 100%. I am in the same boat as you are. I have a kid, 1 boy, 2 girls, and they aren't as passionate about the game as I am. But we're hoping that the youngest one comes around to it. But like you said, different people come to the game for different reasons. So I still have hope.
Yeah.
I still have hope.
And I think they learn by your passion and dedication, whether they're in the game or not. They're learning from the game and through you.
That's true. I just haven't been, I guess when you get caught up with life, soccer was the one thing that I had to give up, My priorities changed as to when I didn't have a family. The ball was life, period. It was all the time. But, this is filling that void. And I guess as they get older, they're understanding a little bit more about what dad's doing. The podcast room. And they'll come in here and yell at mics. But then slowly they understand that, dad kind of knows what he's talking about. So I'm taking over a U8 team right now at the Y.
Oh, nice.
I signed up to be an assistant because I didn't want the commitment. But there wasn't a coach after all. And I got filled into that role. And
I've never heard that before.
What? Right? How does that happen? Considering there's so many players out there and high school players that could fill in and volunteer. But unfortunately, it happens. And I'm happy that I took that role. But yeah, they see that and they're just like, While my son is out picking daisies, my daughter's right next to me and says, hey, can I be your little coach? And I'm like, yes,
there you go.
You're a little coach. So we gathered the U8s and I'm like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we're going to do this. Okay. Little coach, do you have anything to say? And she says, yeah. That's it. She agrees. I'm like, all right, break. So she's there. But some kids have it and some don't. And that's what I'm learning. But I have hope. So
there you go.
You are so involved with the game now. How did that start? I know it didn't start with that kid game that you went to go watch under 6. So how did you start getting so involved into the game like you are now? Yeah,
like I tell all my players, that I'm interacting with is, it doesn't start on a podium. It starts with a step, taking a step. And my step was getting involved with that U6 girls team in Bixby and, learning how they play and, their mentality and the different characteristics that they have. And then their daughter stopped playing. And so I reached out to Victor Moreland, big time, player of Oklahoma here, and I said, hey, what do you have going on? And he said, well, I don't have any club teams, but we have a rec side. So I said, yeah, sure. I just want to learn, So my very first season, I was crazy. I picked up a U6 girls team, a U8 boys team, and a U14 boys team. Wow.
That's 3. I mean, 3 teams is a lot, but then there's a range,
Yeah, there was. I just wanted to learn like the steps and stages, and how they interacted with the game and, different ways that I could reach them through the game. So I was pretty dialed in.
You just went head first.
Yeah, that's right.
How did that first year go?
It was tough. I think I had much more success and enjoyment with the little ones. I didn't know how to coach the big game, so I just listened to whatever the parents told me. And so it was, 11 Chiefs and very little Indians, if you will. I failed miserably.
But you learned.
I learned, yeah. It's I need to remember that failing is like falling. On a bike, we don't say you failed, you fell. And, a lot more falls than I've had successes.
Well, yeah, that's very true. But I mean, look at you now. Who's to say you would be here if it wasn't for the falls? You know, so diving in there head first with 3 teams sounds like a lot.
It was.
Where did you go from there? I mean, you went 3 teams. You probably dialed it back.
Yeah, I dialed it back, and then they had some club opportunities open up. So I still coached on the recreational side with the little ones, like 8-year-old. And then I had I'm going back a little while. They were 87s and 89 boys that I work with, Jose and coach over there. And yeah, that was kind of the start.
What was the club?
Nationals and Union Soccer Club.
Is the club still
they're still around. Mm-hmm.
Nice. And then from there, where did the next
soccer step?
The next soccer step, yes.
So Wilbert Maximore at Blitz was working on building the boys side of the program. It had started out a girls club, and he reached out to me, saw me coaching, and so.
How many years had you been coaching up to this point?
Probably only 3.
3 years?
Yeah, 3 years, I think. Yeah.
Doing 2 teams or 1 team?
Yeah, 2 teams and just helping, wherever I could. Yeah.
3 was too much.
Yeah, 3 was too much. Although I did it again later, but.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to think because, why is this guy offering me another role? I'm here.
Did you have to leave your role? Probably.
Yeah,
that was the situation. Right?
Yeah, I went to Jose and Victor. And I said, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And they said, "Oh yeah, he's a very good guy." And they said, "Hey, look, there's a very good growth opportunity. You're always welcome here, obviously, but I think it's a good step for you." So my mentors, at the time in soccer were like, "Yeah, it's a good move." So I went over there and just coached boys teams, helped build up the juniors academy.
These were a little bit older kids than what you were used to. Did you end up with the first club sticking to the younger kids?
No. So I just followed the age. Mm-hmm. So as the 89s kind of went,
you grew up with them.
U12s, U14s, I kind of grew with them and stuck with them for quite a while. Mm. There was a really good, solid group in the whole state of 89s on the boys' side.
A strong year, the 89s. I'm a 91.
Yeah, that was strong too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I ended up playing here with Cuervo when they were doing their thing here for a little bit until they kind of dissolved.
Yeah.
From there, I went to Cosmos.
Okay.
But I started very late, and it was in high school.
Nice.
It was high school, and we even caught wind of there being club.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So my parents we had no idea. You know what I mean? We'd play at the Y. It wasn't until high school when I saw other kids that were really good. And, where do you play? Oh, we play over here with Cuervo. You should come check it out. Nice. And that's kind of where I got my foot into the competitive and the club scene. So, yeah, that's... You said that. And it's interesting. That was going to be one of the questions eventually down the road is you get to see all these ages and all these years and all these classes. So you have a different, a bird's eye perspective of it. It was going to be what year excites you the most, getting to see all these players. And I guess we can answer it now,
Yeah.
And then kind of dive back. But is there a year that excites you, the active ones under high school right now that you see?
Yeah. So really I know a lot of, coaches that are in my role or have been in my role. Always look at the high performance, but honestly, the biggest joy I have is with the little ones.
The little ones.
Still today, yeah. And those that players that are marginalized, for social economical reasons, or maybe they have, special powers, like Down syndrome or autism. I like to say they have special powers because they do.
I say that as well.
They open my heart so much. So. That's my biggest passions in the game is those that aren't being serviced through the game.
And you're doing that through what's the program?
Top Soccer.
Top Soccer.
Yeah, it stands for the Total Outreach Program for soccer. It's a national program ran by U.S. Youth Soccer.
So what is it that you all do through that program?
We get kids off the bench into the game.
Off the bench and into the game.
Yeah. So that's as simple as I can put it. I through my journey, I would walk through the sidelines in different clubs, and I would see a sibling playing the real game, right? The beautiful game. And then I would see their sibling that may have a challenge that is sitting on the bench. and just something stirred inside of me. My sister actually planted it in me long ago, but she had me come volunteer as a teacher's aide at Broken Arrow High School years and years ago, and she was a special education teacher. So when I blended my passion of the game with my passion of people, it was just like a perfect fit. And it's everything. Again, we don't start at the podium. We start with a step. And last week, this is the first public announcement. Well, last week I was named National Technical Director of the Top Soccer Program.
Wow,
with the USU.
congratulations.
So, thank you.
That's huge.
It's an honor, yeah.
Yeah. I like to say, though, but that means the work is now starting, right?
That's right.
That's exciting. For someone who has as much passion for it like you do, you must have a lot of ideas or things that you're kind of wanting to implement. Is there anything that you're...
Yeah, like you keep saying, all the things I do. I always say I just do one thing. I'm in the relationship business. I just happen to love football. And so I had my first meeting with our committee last night for Top Soccer. And, my message to them is, how can I help? Not I have this agenda and I have it my way and I want to push my way. It is, how can I serve you? And I think if you enter anything in life with open hands and willing to serve and put work in, you can't go wrong. Yeah.
Seems like you're going to be empowering a lot of people who were in the same shoes that you were in, and that's always needed. And you said this program stretches across all states?
It does. Some states have more programs than others, just like, any program. I still run a program out of Owasso, a local program. We range from about 30 to 40 athletes. But there's Edmond has, Hera has, Duncan has one, Lawton's starting one up, Broken Arrow has one, Metro, Tulsa has one. So my goal here in Oklahoma is try to have at least one program in each county.
All 77.
There you go.
That's amazing. Amazing. What does that look like? Acquiring coaches to kind of be on board with this? And then...
Yeah, a lot of people I've noticed are intimidated by this part of our community. And my message to them is, do you love the game and do you love people? Then you're probably a good candidate, So honestly, it's just championing, one champion and that is willing to do some, some administrative work and communication. It's not very hard. I kind of created like a tops in a box, so it's like, hey, this is how you, coordinate with local universities and, community outreach. Special Olympics is a great partner of Top Soccer and, just different things like that. And then, there is coaching certifications. We offer them here. So you can, for a head coach or even a volunteer coach, it's called a Top Soccer coaching course or a Top Soccer buddy course. We run those throughout the state as well. So if you want to be more armed, when you're on game day. With the beauty of Top Soccer, it doesn't have to look the same in every organization. Weatherford does one where it's kind of like an event every month. So they advertise it every month. And at first I was like, man, that's only 12 a month. But then I looked at the season games, and some seasons are like 6-7 weeks in the spring. I was like, okay, that's cool.
It almost evens out, right?
Yeah, it's really neat. And, as some of us know, they have a futsal facility so they can go indoors when the weather's bad and,
that's perfect.
Get some fresh air. So
and the playing field is level, it's the little stuff like that.
It is.
That's cool. And I bet you those type of courses probably prepare the coaches for the different type of situations that might be placed in. I get why it would seem intimidating. Coaching just going into coach period is intimidating, but knowing that this could be different, it could make someone a little bit more intimidating. But you're right. It's just in its most simplest terms, if you like people and if you have a passion for the game, then you could be a good candidate for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. So then 77 counties. It reminds me of what we call here at the Football Factory Mas Futbol. It's basically what our job comes down to is we at the Football Factory, I like to highlight players, highlight teams, and what that in turn does is it provides opportunities, and it might motivate someone else to try hard, and highlighting a school and all-state players out of Sallisaw, Oklahoma, empowers them to do better, and it's Mas football, and it's no different from what I see that you're doing, with that and raising the game like that. So that's huge, and I really had no idea that there were these type of opportunities for players like that.
Yeah, it'll change your life. We have colleges, teams that come out and volunteer. 90% of the time, one of the college athletes is crying afterwards.
Really?
And with joy, but also perspective. Sometimes when we play at the elite levels or coach at the elite levels, sometimes our pride can get in the way, right? We're all human, right? And then to come to a community like this, where...
I'm going to make sure this camera's recording.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Come to a community like this that reminds you of why you got in the game and the beautiful things that can happen through and in the game.
Yeah, that could be really powerful to witness. Yeah. And because, like you said, you're merging two passions, the passion of soccer, which can burn very strongly into people, but then this as well, and yeah, I can imagine, how soccer makes me feel, but then seeing what that does to someone who normally wouldn't get that opportunity, in an environment that allows them to thrive, and they're getting motivated like that. And that's providing Mas football,
Yeah.
And then to see what that in turn does for the player, how that impacts them and how that allows them to grow too. That's super huge. So,
could we pause for a moment?
Definitely.
I want to go back to Mas football.
Okay.
I love how that you celebrate the players and fight for Oklahoma players. And I definitely believe we need more of you and more Mas football. There's too many of us in our state that look to California or Texas and try to mimic them. We have Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has talent. Oklahoma has great people. I had a choice to move anywhere, and I chose Oklahoma for a reason. And we need to celebrate that, and we need to fight for our kids.
Definitely.
So thank you for what you do.
I appreciate that. Thank you. You're 100%. We have a great soccer community here, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of great things. And sometimes a little flashlight, to kind of show everyone what everyone's doing, can provide some perspective that, we're doing pretty great things here in Oklahoma,
100%.
On top of that, you are involved with ODP.
Yes.
As a player that, got late into the club game, I had zero experience with ODP. I would hear about it. I would hear, hey, we're going to try out this weekend. And that's about as far as I would get into that conversation. Could you let me know what is ODP?
Yeah, absolutely. So ODP is an acronym for the Olympic Development Program. It's ran nationally through U.S. Youth Soccer. They are the stewards of the U.S. Soccer. So U.S. Soccer, obviously, is a huge country, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't have the resources to put an office in every state and have scouts, in every club. So in 1977, they created the Olympic Development Program. And the idea is a grassroots initiative to identify, select, and empower elite players. So I know elite is thrown around a lot, but we compare those players against the key qualities of a U.S. national team player, both youth and senior teams. So we take those key qualities in each position, and we look for those, not only current, but also we have to kind of, look at a genie in a bottle and say, hey, what potential does this player have? So we're scouting talent across the state that not only is good now, but what is the upside? And I like to say, yes, it's for elite talent, but we scout effort. Most everything we do is effort. Effort and character goes a long way in anything. When I was scouting in the MLS, I would always ask the referees at halftime or after the game, hey, how was number 7? How did they interact with their players? I would watch number 7 in the huddle. Was he paying attention to coach? How was he warming up before the game? So I was a different scout, I guess. I just use everybody as spies.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that you ask a ref, because they will give you a different type of perspective depending on how the player is doing in the game, and why ask a ref?
Yeah. So, again, we know that we can fix tactical, technical, even some mental and physical deficiencies. But at the top level and at the lowest levels, you can't fix character. So if a player doesn't have the character that we can trust, we don't bring him into, high performance pathways.
Makes sense. It's a bad apple, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's an investment. When you go into an academy, most academies are 100% free. They're investing in all the staff, the facilities, all your kits, your travel, everything like that. So even though you're a child, it's also a business, so you're sort of a commodity as well. Mm-hmm. So they want to make sound investments in their players. Once you're in, their whole passion is getting you to the first team and getting you caps on the national team. So they want to make sure that they're not getting, like you said, a bad apple.
Yeah, because at the very top could, be a liability.
Yeah.
For a player because it's a big web of scouts. It's a big web of teams and a big web of tryouts that pushes you up another step. Let's say I'm going out to try out and I try out for ODP and I guess I make the cut. What does that look like and what's those steps look like and what's it look like at the very top of this ODP program?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so we do two things in Oklahoma. We have scouts that are just at tournaments, things like that, where we're looking for players that fit those key qualities. And then we also have open tryouts. That is, you feel like you want to invest in your future. You want to see where you stack up against other talent in the state. Then you'll go to an open tryout. Our next open tryouts are August 22nd through the 24th in Midwest City. So what we like to do is we like to come in, see them in training sessions, but also see them in games. So it's almost like a tournament environment with training sessions attached to it.
Nice.
That way we can see you. And let's be honest, like sometimes we're just so nervous, when it's our first game or our first training session in a new environment that, we make mistakes that we typically wouldn't make. So we like to build those bonds and make sure, families, parents, players are very comfortable. So we like to do it over, a 3-day period. And then we'll go with smaller, kind of talent ID events. Some we've done them in Enid, Tulsa, Jinx, out here in the city, Edmond. So we try to go to the metro areas because we try to keep costs down. We're a nonprofit, so we try to keep costs down for families. The game is getting more and more expensive, so we try to keep costs down. So we'd love to be putting identification events in all 77 counties.
Yeah,
but then the cost is gonna.
There's manpower that is involved, and you're gonna want things set up properly as well. So
Absolutely.
There's the whole logistic side of it. So it definitely makes sense.
And the staffing is not volunteer staffing. Like Sunday, we were working on defending, and there was 2 former pros out there, 1 Cuban national team player. We try to bring in the highest level of coaches that we can, but we also have a diverse line of coaches because I believe multiple voices in the game help players because they all have different experiences. There was 4 Oklahoma college coaches as well out there, club directors, you name it. So we try to, to teach the elite, you have to have an elite coach, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Sounds like there's a lot of experience.
Yeah. So if you make it past the tryouts, then you become a representative of Oklahoma.
Okay.
So that's the cool thing about ODP. It's the only way you can represent your state, potentially your region, which we're the South region, and one day the national team. And I know that sounds like a lot. It sounds like a dream, right? Since I took over 3 years ago, we've had at least one player of Oklahoma make it to the national team every year, both on the boys and girls side. Caden Locke from around this area, right?
Not a sophomore, that guy?
Yeah, let's go. And then on the female side, she just got back from Spain playing international friendlies. We got Integra Dehart. So we love to highlight players just like you guys. If you ask any of our parents, we fight for our kids, and so once you make it past the state level, then you're training and developing to make the next step, right?
Which is the regional level.
Yes, the region level.
Our region is made up of which states?
13 states, so it's all the big boys. Every big state except for California. So we got
region?
Texas. We have Florida,
Southeast,
Georgia.
Southeast then.
Yeah. Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia. I don't know if anyone knows, they have more kids on the national team than any other state.
Really?
So they're a huge hotbed, and obviously U.S. Soccer's coming to the outskirts of Atlanta with their new facilities.
Would you say that's because they might be doing something different, or is that just the level of soccer that's out of the state, or is their ODP more developed than it is here? I mean, I did recently see that Oklahoma's ranked number 3, right, out of the...
Yeah, we're trying to get our kids technical.
Yeah. But what are they doing differently there? Because when you run an operation this big, they must have a lot of data. You know what I mean? And data is where the answers are. So I'm curious as to what data they might be seeing out of Georgia than maybe out of Oklahoma.
Sure.
Is there anything that you see that they might be doing differently?
I think the big thing we have to take in consideration, where there's no other country like America. We're so vast and there's so many people here. And that's not an excuse, it's just reality, right? So Dallas probably has more players playing the game than our entire state, right, as far as the numbers are concerned. So our population is a big difference, right? It's no different than 4A, 5A, 6A schools, right? There's more density, more population, more kids, more athletes, so more competition, right? And I'm a firm believer in competition breeds competition. You want kids to be more aggressive and more creative, do 1v1s. If they're good 1v1 defending, 1v1 in transition, 1v1 attacking, like
you got a solid player there.
Yeah, you got a solid player, right? The rest we just build on step by step by step, right? So definitely Georgia has more population than we do, but I don't want to discredit them as well. They have a very good pedigree of coaching and directors out there, and they've had one of our South region directors was the state director for a number of years. So they've been doing it longer than we have, and I think they figured out how to best serve their families earlier. When we're looking, at Oklahoma ODP, when we're looking at other states, and we're not looking to copy them, but we are looking for best practices.
Yeah, imitation is the greatest. What is it? Imitation is the greatest compliment. It could be.
Yeah, compliment. I mean? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for instance, before we would shy away in Oklahoma playing top competition. So we didn't want to play South Texas boys because they're so good. We didn't want to play, any academy, MLS academies. We didn't want to play the Georgias. The very first year I was here, I took ODP teams up to Sporting Kansas City and played their first teams. We got smashed, but we learned.
Now you get a taste.
Yeah, we got to learn
what it's going to be like.
Yeah,
what it should
absolutely.
Be like, what it should look like.
And the second week in June, we're going down to Dallas to play Georgia. We're going to play North Texas, South Texas, because to be the best, you got to play the best.
And when you say we, you're taking...
ODP kids that are on the state team.
So you're taking... And that's every year?
Yeah. Every year we recycle.
Like, not every year, but like every year age group.
Oh, yes. So national ODP starts at U12. Okay. We are starting this year. We're going to go into U10 because we want to identify kids earlier, and we want to empower parents and players with good information so they can make the right choices on their path. So if we get them early enough, we get them exposed to the environment, they're not going to be held to the same standards as our U17s, obviously. We'll bring them up in steps and stages, but we'll put them in the environment where they can thrive. But it's also for us to connect with parents. That's one thing that I asked when I came into Oklahoma Soccer was, could I serve as, the parent liaison? Can I work on parent education, parent engagement? Because I feel like it's missing. Sometimes we, coaches, even clubs, sometimes they feel like the parent is the enemy, and they have certain dramas that brought them to that attention. But we all have biases on different things and different people. We just have to recognize those. But I don't know how you can develop a human without a village, and the closest person that works with them every day is their parents. So we have to partner with parents, in my opinion. We're not above them. We're not beneath them. We're partners with them in education. I mean, churches use Bibles. The schools use books and Chromebooks. We use a ball. So we're all trying to develop humans that, just happen to be in soccer.
Ultimately, that's the goal, right? To create a positive person that gives back and creates more positivity, creates more Mas Futbol.
Mas Futbol.
Yeah, so that's super cool. So then so you take the whole unit, the whole age group, or it's just...
Yeah, typically we take a team, right? So the top part of the team, we're not subjected to numbers. So in club soccer, obviously you have to make a team to play. ODP, you don't. For instance, last year, I only had witnessed 3 2007 girls that I believed could make the next level, right? Doesn't mean that I'm 100% right, but I have a staff, and we surround them with, there's 50 of us that have a vast, amount of history, but also knowledge, So they've been identifying players at all different levels across the world. So we felt like there was only 3 that met the criteria, those key qualities that I talked about. So people are like, well, what do you do if you don't have a team? So the good thing is ODP's national. So we all use the same handbook, if you will, all the same tactics, all the same curriculum. We just deliver it in different voices, right? So one of them was a goalkeeper, Integra. So it was easy to work with her. I was a former goalkeeper. We had really good goalkeeper trainers here. So we worked with her, and we knew she was doing the game all the time, right? So that was easy. The other 2 girls, we offered them to go to Dallas. I said, hey, I know it's a drive. You can either train with the younger age group, right? Or you could go down to Dallas. And they said, well, with ECNL, we're always in Dallas anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. And so they hooked up with Warren is the technical director of North Texas. So we've been really good neighbors and just, sharing best practices, but also just linking arms and saying, hey, how can we make a difference in the game? So he invited them into their training facility. Every single one of those girls made the South Region team.
Wow.
So I mean, like, the proof is in the
pudding.
The pudding, yeah.
That's interesting. And I find it very valuable to have such a wide net like that, because every community is different, The director's job in Oklahoma definitely looks different from the Texas one, probably.
100%.
So, and then being able to have, like I said, all that data to then be able to use it here or there, that's what I find interesting, is just like how different each region is. We talked about Georgia. I didn't know this, but in Georgia, they, in the high school season, play 20 plus games. Yeah, here we are limited to 15. You know what I mean? So to be able to play more games over there, there's just little things that, details that do affect the pudding. You know what I mean? That we're all playing a part in. So that's huge. I know that last year you guys also went and competed internationally as well. I know Caden was part of the team that went overseas and played in England too. So you guys are also providing those type of opportunities and chances for kids to, see what it's like to play against international competition. Was that something that you were also a part of as well?
Yes. So we try to help, wherever a kid wants to go, their effort again, and their passions. We just want to facilitate that. We understand that it's not, one size doesn't fit all. So every player's journey is a little bit different. Caden was able to make the region team. And then he went to Costa Rica and played with them. And then he also made the U.S. national team through ODP. And so then he traveled over to Europe and played in competition there as well. So that's the nice thing as well is, we have, our state staff, and then we have region staff and national staff, and there's been a really good collaboration as of late to where we're talking about individual players and where they're at, where they might be missing things so that we can work on them here at the state. The other nice thing is when a player makes a regional or national team, they still stay with us at the state. It's always a confusion thing because, it's like, wait a second, I'm on the region team. Yeah, but you don't want to go twice a month to Florida to train, right? Mm-hmm. So since it's the same handbook, right? And we have region staff, in the state as well, and national staff. So it's easy, if you will, to help players along, but also it's rewarding. I just got a text from Caden's dad, and yesterday, and he said it all started with you. Wow. I was like, whoa. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we had one of the former Tulsa Roughnecks coaches. He actually saw him. His name's Lloyd Kinnear, and he's done private lessons with MLS players for years and USL players. He's kind of the go-to guy when a player gets hurt and they're coming back off injury. So he helps them get ready. And I said, hey, you mind coming out to ODP? Oh, no, coach, let's go. And he actually saw Caden first. And he goes, I'm going to call you UCLA right now. He saw and he came to me and he was like, Adam, you got to come over here. So got to give it up to our staff, right?
That's what I was going to ask, if with Caden in particular, if that were something that you guys had noticed beforehand or, but it sounds like he had caught people's eye. Yeah,
he caught people's eye in the very first tryouts. It's interesting.
He also has a futsal background as well.
He does. So it's really neat to see how futsal has grown in our state. And to be frank, we would love to see all our ODP kids participate in some form of futsal in their state. I know it's hard because it's not in every neck of the woods, right? Mm-hmm. And indoor facilities are harder to get than grass, right? But what we've noticed is they're much better in tight spaces, and their decision making is quicker. I like to say I'm not an expert in futsal, but I love the game, and I like to say it's like putting soccer in a pressure cooker. Tighter spaces, smaller fields, fast-paced environment. Goalkeepers get better footwork. Their reactions are better. So I think.
And then you take them out of the court and plug them into a field where they have more time. Their tight touches is used a lot more. That's it. So many benefits.
Yes.
So many benefits.
And to link that back to, professional scouts, when we send kids up on trial, what I hear back is almost every time with a player that didn't make the cut was we need them better in tight spaces and we need their decision making to be more rapid. So they want them to decide what they're going to do next before they receive the ball. Mm. And if the picture changed on the field, then they can change their mind there. But they want them to be very proactive, thinking at least 1-2 steps ahead.
Dang. As a player receiving that information, you ask the next question. Well, how do I train that? Yeah. How do I train quick decision making, control in tight spaces, adapting to that pressure? Having to really use my body because our shape. There's a smaller space. Well, futsal answers all of those questions.
It does. It really does. We like to say the game's the best teacher, so now you're playing two sports. For the longest time, I always heard, futsal complements, football, soccer, but to me it's two sports that complement each other. I want to grow the game in both because I see the joy and the benefits of it. And futsal also helps when for spaces, not every state, not every city has wide open spaces. So having an asphalt court that's outside, that's accessible, or a concrete court, we know the greatest footballers in the world play street soccer. And Barcelona right now is trying to figure out how they can get more cars out of the city because they miss the kids playing in the streets. Mm. So it's important.
Yeah, we might not have a lot of spaces for that, but everyone does have a basketball court.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's possible. And, we've had talks here of what we would like to see, and a high school futsal kind of OSSAA could definitely implement a futsal league, and that would only make our football here better in the state. So I think it's bound to happen.
I agree. If you think about it, most churches, most schools, have, a wooden floor or carpet, high-speed carpet floor, and, some of the recreational rooms that churches have. Then every YMCA, every community center typically has, facility. I know the Rogers State guys, have been playing on fast carpet and in a community center when the weather's bad out in Claremore. So it's at every level. It's not just, hey, kids need to play futsal when they're young. Yes, it's definitely going to help them, but it's a game for life.
Game for life. People like here at Bill Miro and Victo doing it right.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you and Garrett and Kit had a past, but it all stems from futsal itself, right?
It does. My very first time taking Oklahoma teams to region camp, I met Kit Stevenson, and I couldn't get him to shut up about futsal. And what was great was, I had a passion to bring futsal to the state, but I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. So I just always supported those guys, and always we always trying to collaborate. When I look at my calendar, to put ODP dates on, I look to make sure that our training dates aren't coming on tournaments, which is very hard these days.
Yeah.
There's like 3-4 tournaments every weekend, but we try to stay off of the clubs because we know how important it is for them to, facilitate these tournaments. But then we're also talking to, Kit and those guys to make sure we're not on some major, event for futsal as well.
That's hard to do. That's probably the hardest part of, logistics, is trying to pick a date that works with everybody, because then eventually you get to the point where I'm just going to pick a weekend and make it or not. But it seems like you're trying to make sure that it's available for everyone.
Absolutely. And the unique thing with ODP is parents and players, we know that players that are on an elite pathway are busy. So yes, every time you come to training, you're getting better, right? Every time you go to an event, you're getting better, you're learning, you're growing. But we know there's conflicts, and we know that the higher you get, the more you're wanted and needed, right?
The more you're probably playing, the more you're practicing with other teams.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, ODP is Olympic development program. A lot of times that development is more interchangeable with identification as well, because some kids, they need to be identified, but they're too busy, right? For instance, there's a group out of Guyman, Oklahoma that, they have to get hotels, Friday night to do something on a Saturday, right? Or Saturday night to do something on a Sunday. So we're trying to facilitate things like that. We worked with Kansas Soccer. So Kansas Soccer has ODP as well. And so they helped service them. We serviced them one year, they serviced them another year, because we know travel is a big thing. Yeah. And we want to make sure that, it doesn't make logistical sense for everyone in both metros to drive to Guyman, but we do want to facilitate things of that nature. We have coaches all the way up in Miami, Oklahoma, right, at the colleges, Adam Young, and he's on ODP staff as well. So we're trying to create satellite so that we can have communication with club directors on how we can best serve them. We don't want to take away from what the clubs are doing, because that's where the development happens, at least the majority of it.
Yeah, you have to keep that relationship with those clubs, pretty strong, because I can see how it can be a win-win for everyone, but I can also see how that can turn into, it not seeming that way, and how it might seem like one is, trying to serve their interest over the other person. So it's a big, like I said, a big window, because I think of those communities in Guyman, which has a strong soccer community, but they're out there. So they could just as easily be Kansas, Amarillo, Colorado, that serves those communities. But it feels good to know that web is wide, but the ODP is everywhere.
Yeah, I had a short stint in the state association as a assistant technical director back in the, I guess it was like the 2016. And, I didn't feel like the states were really working, together to serve everyone, right? And we know everyone has to, stay in business. Even if you're a nonprofit, you have to service customers to make a profit, or to make money so you can support all the programs.
Your projects.
Yeah, but as of late, like I said, the last 3 years I've been back, as a technical director and full time. There's been some changeovers at all the different states, and we've become more tight knit. We've become more collaborative. And what I've noticed as when I'm working with the federation or working with USU soccer at the national level is the higher you go up in the game, the more collaboration there is. I feel like sometimes, at the grassroots level and at the club levels, there's a lot of battling going on, a lot of drama. But true growth happens with collaboration. And I wish that those at, the grassroots and club level, and even high school level can understand that, at the top of the pyramid, there's collaboration, unlike I've never seen.
Yeah, it's just, I guess from what I've been learning from all these conversations that I've had is there's a fine line between development and winning, yes. And that's the answer you eventually have to ask yourself is, are we developing or are we winning? Because they both kind of pull you in different directions, Yes. It feels good to win, but it also is more valuable to develop. But in some situations, you don't have room for one or the other. High school is so short of a window that you don't necessarily have the chance to develop. So then you have to ask yourself, how do we develop in high school? So whether that's getting involved in middle school, regardless, there's different situations. And yeah, developing or winning seems like to be the fork in the road for all coaches,
Yeah.
Because you said you like to do the younger age, and that's obviously more developing, but that's no different from a teacher. What role do you want to see yourself in? Do you want to see yourself as a high school teacher, winning, preparing them for that, or do you want to see yourself on the developmental side? So yeah, that's.
And I think we're all trying to be lifelong learners, right? So I think development happens, in trials and tribulations, and it also happens when you're holding up the trophy, right? And I think it's important that we breed competition into every person, every kid that we get. But does competition, does it excuse, bad sportsmanship? Does it excuse development? Hey, if we put the big, strong, fast kid, at U7s and just give him the ball every time, right? So we can run up the score 12-0. Is that really worth it? You got to win.
But at what price?
At what price?
Yeah.
And as as being a dad and I've learned is our kids do way more of what they see and experience than what we say. So coaches are teaching players whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing.
Yeah, with everything. That's kind of the idea that I took with the under 8s that I do at the Y. I have them from such a short window that the only mission that I had in my head was let's just have them have fun. And if at the end of this 6 weeks, they want to continue playing soccer, then that's a win for me. Yeah, I don't care if we win, lose. Like, my goal is to write up a solid, fun practice that involves just red light, green light, sharks and minnows, basically anything any fun with the ball, and then just kind of, and if they go off and want to play soccer afterwards, then that's it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it reminds me of why you're a little bit of everywhere in this. Then you have your top soccer, which is more of developmental, but also providing opportunities to the state and the ODP level, which is basically the same thing, but at a different scope.
Absolutely.
So you're kind of affecting it in all angles, right? You're attacking the game in all angles. And we haven't even touched on the goalie, your goalie initiative and what you're trying to do as a goalie. What are you trying to do for goalies?
Our mission is to advance every goalkeeper. Again, I saw a gap in the market for keepers where everyone wanted to work with the elite keepers, right? The high level, high performing goalkeepers. And we all know that, it starts at the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I fell into the same thing because obviously, high performance goalkeepers want to train more, right? So it was over 20 years ago. I started just project goalkeeping, and I call it project goalkeeping because it is a project. It's a process, and we're just trying to advance every goalkeeper. So, like you said, with the U8s, I want them to fall in love with goalkeeping, but also I want to advance them, because the game is so much more fun when you have the tools to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when frustration sets in because of deficiencies in your game, then your passion and love for the game, diminishes. So we'd like to advance them that way. So started project goalkeeping, brought on former pros and current pros and college, goalkeepers, and it's been rewarding. And it's part of the game that is a specialized position. So you need specialized training. And this isn't me putting a plug in for project goalkeeping. To be honest, I've retired from from training. I've had some car accidents, and the metal plates and screws in my spine aren't great for diving anymore. But we just still want to facilitate the development. We have a chapter in Utah, so one of my MASL goalkeepers, Richard Nolasco, he lives in Utah, Salt Lake City. So he runs Change Life Soccer, which is our after-school programming for kids that can't afford the game, or low income, or they on the autism spectrum. We just want to change life through the game. But he runs our Salt Lake City and Ogden chapter.
Yeah, you're serving the most underserved on the pitch, right?
Trying to, yes.
We've talked about how soccer's growing and how there's a lot of underserved communities in soccer. But then if we dial it in to the micro, goalies are the ones that get the least of the least.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's a big void in the market. Still is. That we can always be doing better by our goalies, because as my previous guest said, if you have a bad goalie, you're basically running uphill.
Absolutely. I mean, club players even know it when they're looking to where they're going to play the next year. They want to know who the goalkeeper is going to be, whether they're a forward or they're a six playing in the midfield or center back. Like it changes the entire game. You even see it at the pro level when the first team, the first team goalkeeper has the starting spot and he gets injured, and the second goalkeeper comes in. You can see the mentality of the players and where they trusted the first team player and where they trust the second.
Mm-hmm.
So it matters, especially in the modern game where you're not just a babysitter of the pipes.
Yeah,
you're the first attacker. And you've got to be amazing with both feet. You have to be killer with distribution. And a shot stopper,
All right. You have to be the best of both worlds,
yes.
Better than all the people. And yeah, the game has changed for goalies. So is that something now that you're not actively training, but still actively providing sessions and leveling up the keepers?
Yeah. Typically it's on a club-by-club basis, so if they're asking to redevelop their curriculum, or we come alongside them and look at their curriculum, and then we break it down into, this is what you can teach. We can also work with their staff to implement that. What we've noticed is there's a big disconnect between the goalkeeper staff and the coaching staff. So the information, it's not for any negative reason. It's just you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So what we're really trying to do is get the collaboration of the goalkeeper coaches along with, the club coaches and rec coaches, everything, if there's communication, because, if I'm working with all the recreational goalkeepers from, say, Club A, right, and I'm telling them to build it out of the back, and then their head coach is telling them to punt it every time, Boot it. Yeah, it confuses kids first, It's like, who do I listen to? I want to be, respectful of my head coach, but also want to be respectful of my goalkeeper coach. And the fact remains that at the higher levels, if they see a goalkeeper's first instinct is to punt and their head's down, they cross them off the list. If they're not willing to find, because distribution is just like a field player. They're trying to pass it for a reason, dribble it for a reason, right? So you have to see the goalkeeper actually making a decision, So if there's an opportunity for, the 7 to cut in and run behind the line and that goalkeeper can get the ball there and they saw that and they're trying to maximize that opportunity, then that makes sense, right? But if they kick, hope, and pray, that's not football.
So you're saying more futsal? No, I'm kidding. But you can't just boot it in futsal,
No.
You have to find. That's what futsal's about, finding your options.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's crucial and key. Keepers need love.
Absolutely.
Keepers need
I like
love.
that.
Keepers
Should be a T-shirt.
Keepers need love. Yeah, we're gonna patent that. Over there. Wow, that's a lot. We've covered a lot.
Yeah. It's been fun.
It's been an hour plus.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I can talk.
Yeah. And I feel like we still have a lot more, but I always like to leave it in a good spot for the next time you come on. We'll have more to talk about. I want to say thanks for the hat.
Absolutely.
I want to wear it, but I also want to build on my wall of my collection that I have here going on. So it's definitely going to go up here so that everyone can see that we had ODP, yourself, and everything that you kind of represent here in this podcast room. So I appreciate you for making time.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure getting to know you and what you guys are doing here. I hope more people tune in and definitely your passion for the game and for people is contagious, and I just hope people grab it, hold on to it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we I feel like are always leveling up. Every year I feel like I'm always proud of the work we've done, but I'm always left with more ideas. I think we can do a lot more, and I feel like it's possible every year, you know what I mean? Because while the Football Factory does, represent itself, it represents a lot of other kids, teams, parts of Oklahoma, and it's like no different from what ODP does, to the state. I see a lot of similar things for both of them. So, yeah, I appreciate it, and we'll continue trying to level up and provide Mas Futbol through whatever ideas we have. And if there's ever anything that we can do to help on your end, feel free to shoot us a message. We would love to push the game forward, just like you are and have been. And the mic is always available as well. If you ever have a message, ever a push for a training or ODP, whatever it might be. If you have a guest that you think would be amazing to have, I am not afraid to talk to anyone. Like I didn't meet you before this, but this is always a great way to get to meet people is behind a mic and getting to hear their story. Answers a lot of questions about why you're doing what you're doing, and it makes sense. It makes sense. So again, I appreciate you for coming on. This was a good time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Likewise. And for the people that have listened up to this point, you guys are great. You guys are the reason we make this happen. Please comment on the YouTube videos. We don't get a lot of comments on there, but any feedback is appreciated. And stay tuned for the next episode of the Mas Futbol Podcast. Peace. There you go.